AI can be used to predict breakups before they ever happen, years before they happen. They can also predict compatibility and whether or not people are likely to go on into a relationship just from a few minutes together for speed dating. Yeah, there may actually be a use for AI and speed dating. There's a lot of really inappropriate uses for AI, and a lot of them have to do with how humans connect. In fact, 41% of Gen Z has broken up with somebody using AI text. And I guess maybe that's not that bad if they just didn't want to be in the situation any longer, but come on, guys. Many more have used AI to communicate with their partners, and now they're being used as interfaces on dating websites. If you are on a dating app in this day and age, chances are you've already engaged with AI, and perhaps you felt a little bit betrayed when you figured out the person you were speaking to was not, in fact, a person. Nonetheless, people are still willing to be in relationships with AI. In fact, as many as 77% of people on dating apps would be fine dating an AI. I'm sorry, I just found that statistic really funny. While most people are getting tricked into thinking AI is a person, you're just willing to date it anyway. I mean, we'll see what happens when we have companion bots that are affordable. That is happening. I mean, right now, they cost about as much as a car. I would not buy a home assistant robot with the technology that exists right now. Of the many things that AI is just not good at, it is very good at finding patterns in noisy data. So using it in order to analyze conversations between partners or even brain activity is surprisingly efficient. We have known for at least a few years, even prior to the birth of AI that we have today, that you could look at things like fMRI patterns in couples' brains and make predictions as to whether or not they were going to last. There is something called neural synchrony. As people interact with each other, their brain patterns should look very similar, and that's supposed to happen with couples too. If it doesn't, or if they diverge, it's less likely that they will continue to be in a relationship. In this case, AI analyzed positive and negative conversations between couples. And the negative conversations actually was not indicative of whether or not they were going to break up 2 years down the line. It was the positive ones and how in sync they were. I mean that quite literally. Their ability to communicate with each other was the determining factor in whether or not they were going to last. This paper I actually really do like. It went on for 10 years before the kind of modern AI that we have today even existed, and started looking at what is important to people, how they feel about their relationships, and then seeing whether or not they last years down the line. And now that they have that data, they're able to make inferences for what beliefs predict a happy relationship, or at least people staying together. I'm a little bit disturbed by the results here. Basically, what was the number one predictor of whether or not people would stay together later is wanting a long-term relationship. Not necessarily with that person, but just in general. And the number one most important factor for the end of that relationship was fantasizing about leaving. That is not a good sign. I do not think you actually needed AI to know that one. I also want to close this out by saying AI outperforms humans in establishing intimacy, as long as people do not know they're talking to an AI. So if you are blind dating and a robot is in the mix, there's a good chance you would become more emotionally attached to the robot than a person, as long as you didn't know. That actually tells me that if people having companion bots ever really becomes normalized, we might be in trouble. You guys remember that episode of Futurama, right? I would ask you whether or not you'd be willing to date a robot, but that study is already in. Most people would. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will keep you up to date. I'm also going to continue putting my face in thumbnails until somebody tells me to stop or it stops being funny, because people asked me to do that. So I did. If the robots ever rebel, I will probably be the person to tell you about it, and I'm on their side. Follow for more.